Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mighty Plays Games. I am Maitre. I'm here with Gerry once again, who you've probably seen on this channel before for our player interview that we did,
I'm
which was
back.
it's so good. It's great. Well, let me give you a little bit of context about what we're doing. So this is part of that mindful gaming series on our, like, I don't know what the right word is, but basically the second week of October is Mental Health Awareness Month. And it feels like a good time to start a series that I've been wanting to do for a while. And this is part of that series. And the whole purpose of the whole series is to drive intentionality around your emotion and your behaviors and that kind of thing. The reason I have Gerry here is because I don't think I've ever played with a GM that is as intentional about specific things as you are. So I think you have a very valuable insight and a really wonderful way of articulating ideas, which is awesome. And I think we
That's very nice.
tend to dive deep into things because we both really value the therapy we fit. And
So, so to be clear for this interview, which of us is on the couch? Are we both on the
I think
couch,
we're
or
both on the couch.
okay?
It's
Well, that's fair. That's
very
fair.
definitely about both of us being like, "Oh God, I can't believe I've admitted that about myself." Okay. So what we're gonna be talking about here is about how true immersion in games for your players comes from being able to let go of your ego. I mentioned a few times here that the most effective way to get success as a GM is to decenter yourself and to make it as much about your players as possible. And in the player interview I did with you, Gerry, and in our subsequent conversations, you've mentioned something similar in terms of your GM philosophy about being a servant king, which is a term I have grown to love and I have used at least 7 times since that interview.
Nice. Yeah.
So it's great. So I thought we dive into something that I think all of us as GMs, when we're running a game, it's something that we are actively pursuing, which is immersion. Like I think that's true regardless of what kind of game you play, because immersion effect, like, maybe it means different things in different contexts, but fundamentally it boils down to player buy-in of the world and the context and decision making within that world and context. So regardless of, like, whether you're doing a really straightforward dungeon crawl with, like, and you want your players to understand that there's, like, a resource constraints and scarcity and, danger around every corner, or you're playing like a really narratively focused game with a lot of political intrigue and you're like an intrepid band of freedom fighters that have to, get weapons from the local crime boss. Like, so whatever kind of game you're playing, you're looking for your players to buy into the story and make decisions within the framework of that story. And that's really all immersion is. It's not anything more complicated than that, I don't think.
Yeah, and not everybody wants immersion, right? Like
Yeah.
I know usually they're D&D players. Let's be real, but there are those people who play it, run it and play it like Diablo. Like, you know, just open a door, kill everything inside the room, pick up the loot, go to the next door, kick that in, and that's just some people's idea of a role-playing game, and that's fine too. I think a long time ago, I just came to terms with the fact that as a person, and certainly as a GM or a player, I'm like Marmite. Like I'm not gonna please everybody. And yeah, so people who get it really get it, and they like me or whatever. But I'm cool with the fact that that's not gonna be everybody's take, right? And the more I lean into that, the more I'm satisfying the people who do like it, the more polarized the people who don't like it are. Like I'm not, if your Diablo is your jam, you want to play Diablo on hex paper, I'm not your guy.
No, me
Just
either.
not.
That's
Uh
really, like, if that,
yeah.
and again, like, no judgment if that's your shtick, but like
Oh,
just
absolutely.
an
Yeah,
observation, like
yeah,
that's not the kind of game we're
yeah.
talking about.
I want immersion in my RPGs. I want role playing in my RP. I want the R and the P
Yeah, sure.
more capital R, capital P,
Little G.
lowercase g.
I love that. I love that. I love that. Uh, so I do have some questions that I want to talk about, just to put a little bit of structure on this conversation because I think we both agreed that it could go off the rails real quick if we
Oh yeah,
weren't
yeah, yeah. No,
careful.
it's gonna be absolute bedlam.
To put some theory around why immersion is so important, what I've found in doing some research around this is if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I'm not saying that that is the best way to identify self-actualization. In fact, I think it could use some work. But in any case, I do think that concept of people needing psychological and philosophical needs met, I think that's true. And if you look at the hierarchy of needs, that psychological need thing is at the very top. So I think of immersion as being like the way in games to kind of fulfill that kind of need. And
Hmm.
so immersion to me objectively is a good thing, like from just a running the game perspective. But the reason I think that people find it so compelling, those of us who are seeking it out, is because it scratches that particular kind of itch for us. And that's my theory. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's just kind of
Hmm.
where I've arrived.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Well,
And
I don't know if it's true. Like I said, it's just a thought. What I want to go back to, not go back to, but continue on the road of is how do we create a fantastically immersive game for your players, and why is letting go of your ego such a big and important part of that? So Jerry, the first question that I have for you, which I will also weigh in on, but I want to get your response first. What do you do to make your games immersive, to create that sense of immersion?
I don't know that I've really ever thought about it. It's just something I do, or it's something I've just practiced over time. I think about what draws me into a good story in fiction, or like on television, or a book, or a comic book, or anything else, and I just try to do that. Like I just literally just parrot what works for me, and I very much am like, the golden rule, right? Almost, do unto others, and I tell unto others the kind of story I'd like to be in, or I
Oh,
try to be
that's
the kind of
cool.
GM I'd like to be playing. I don't know if that sounds narcissistic, but it's
No, no,
it's
that
the
I
only
mean,
way to think about it because I only know
you just
myself
change
and
you
what
want to
I
see in the
like.
world and all.
Yeah, and so what I try to do is not fall too in love with your story, not fall too in love with your great NPC, because they might just walk right on by that guy and go talk to the melon merchant or whatever, right? So
I'm
it's
sorry, can we pause here for just 1 second though, Jerry? Because like this, I think literally happened in a in our game where you had an NPC that was I think supposed to just be kind of background flavor, but for whatever reason, we all just kind of glommed on him.
now he has
And
a whole
my character,
backstory.
yeah,
Yeah,
and my
yeah, yeah,
character is actually pursuing like character growth and maybe some romance even with this NPC who was
yeah,
supposed to just be like a cardboard cutout in the background.
yeah. Yeah, he was. I introduced that character to be sort of the prototypical paragon of what a denizen of this planet is. Yeah, right. So he's the sort of grizzled veteran, and he's like been there, done that. He's got the T-shirt, and he's like a serious badass. And it's like, I want to know more about this guy. Who is this guy? Who does he does he have a girlfriend? Who's his mom? Like, does he have kids? Where did he get those scars? It's like, oh, I'll get back to you. So, like, man, when that happens, that is just gold. It's just so good.
It's amazing. But
And yeah,
I mean, it's a lot of fun that it happened, but it was able to happen because you weren't like super precious about the stuff you had built.
yeah.
Like it wasn't that, listen, it's I put in all this work over here. What the hell do you
Yeah.
mean you want to look over there?
Like, if I was to give advice to a new GM, it would be, this comes with time, right? And I'm old and I have life experience and I've done things, and seen things, and that helps, right? You kind of get a feel for how people work, or you meet so many different people, you're kind of have these types that you can just sort of pull out of your hat. And if you're young and you're getting into the hobby, I would just, use what fiction you love and what TV shows you love, and pull the tropes out of there,
Oh, I love
and
that.
try not to, just try not to let it be about your ego. It doesn't matter how great your idea is. If the people aren't engaging with it, just move on to the other
Have
idea.
another idea. Ideas are free, man.
Yeah.
It's not, and honestly, it's not super difficult to take the stuff you've built over here and reflavor it for
Oh
over
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Like
That
I do
that
that all the time.
yeah. That
All the time.
that death trap can be just the Schrodinger's death trap of doom can just be moved into
Exactly.
the next town.
The
The quantum death trap.
the thing that I do for immersion, because like, and this is for my long form game. For my shorter campaigns, like whatever, I don't do a whole lot for like shorter games and that kind of thing. Or rather, like I sort of describe the world, and I'm very clear about, like, you know how, like, you know that there are things that you as the player know that the characters doesn't, like trolls or like trolls are susceptible to fire, or like whatever, like, you know that as a player, but like maybe your character doesn't. Similarly, I think, and this does not get talked about as often as it should, there are things that your character knows that the player doesn't, by virtue of being a citizen of this world. Like
Oh yeah.
when you are walking around as a person and you kind of see someone who has this like do not fuck with vibe, like you instantly know that. Similarly, your character would know that in the world that they are in.
Oh yeah,
So
and if you commit this big social taboo in this, like, I'm not gonna you would have no way of knowing that.
yeah,
That
but
there's
your
this
character would.
Yeah, that there's this really taboo thing in this made up world that exists in my brain. How the heck would you know unless I
Exactly.
tell you? So I would tell you. I'd be like,
Exactly.
"Oh, you're gonna go up to that guy and punch him in the face." Now your character would know that this guy is like, that's basically like you could be put to death for doing that because this is a
Yeah.
big, religious figure or something, right?
Exactly.
So your character knows that.
Exactly.
So now you're informed, and do you want to do that? Yes, yes, I do. Okay. That's great.
Yeah.
Now
No,
you're in jail.
I'm totally with, but that's exactly, and I think that's the other part of the ego thing is don't hold things so close to the chest. Like the more you can share with your players, the more immersive the world can be
Yeah,
for them to engage with. Like
right.
if you're like, yeah, sure, go ahead, try punch it, see what happens. Like, okay, but you're just kind of being a dick at this point, and like you're just like setting your PCs up for failure,
Yeah.
and like
Well, you have to be, like they say it, it's a hackneyed phrase at this point, but be a fan of PCs. They're
yeah,
the stars of the
yeah,
show, man.
yeah.
It's their credits. Their credits roll before the director. Let's just talk about the elephant in the room. I mean, that table, the game we're talking about, is an amazing frickin' table, right?
It is.
Like,
It is a very engaged group.
there are people, you guys want to flesh out the world. You want to go deep into the lore and all that stuff. So it's just a joy to stretch that out, right? And then you have other tables that just want to get to the next town or the next, it's like, okay, we've done that. I'm happy with that. What's the next thing? What do you got for me next, Gerry? What's the next story beat? Blah blah blah. This is just zooming way, way, way in and blowing it way up. And so it's like I couldn't do it. I thought I could do it in 9 sessions, and absolutely can't. I don't even know if I can do it in 20 sessions at this rate. So it might be 30. I don't know.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. This
Thank
30.
God you guys all wanted to stay on the ride.
Are you kidding? It's so good. It's so good. I'm really committed to seeing how all this fleshes out with my darling Caleb.
Yeah.
I'm
So
really
stay
like,
tuned. This
yeah.
campaign will be on Drive Through RPG someday, maybe.
Amazing. The thing that really works for me in this world and like what I need as a player for immersion, and this might sound a little bit a little bit okey, but like I really need to understand the context of the world. I need to, and for me what that means is I need to know what an average person does for work. Like, what does what like I know that in our game. Like, I know that it's like, a desert technology based, like agrarian, a hunter gatherer tracker kind of like I understand that about our world. Like, if we're playing Shadowrun, I understand that the average person's like maybe a data slave or like a runner or whatever the fuck. I had a really hard time with Numenera. I had a really hard time with Numenera at Ninth World because I'm like, what do people do for work in the Ninth World? And I could not get, I couldn't get it. And what ended up happening is that I played it with like 3 or 4 different GMs before I finally got it. Because I honestly, like, I think of myself as reasonably smart. And so I was like, why am I not getting this? Like what is stopping me from understanding? And I realized that it was this. Because like at that time I couldn't quite put into words what it was that was missing for me. And so, there's all these descriptions of the world that like it's the ninth world because it's so many billion years in the future, and like the sand is actually, instead of normal sand, it's more kind of ferrous because it's the ruins of ancient cities. Like, there are these fucking cows that look like whales that are actually whales, or like like it's all very like vividly described.
Yeah,
But, like, what does someone do for work in that world? Like, what do you, and anyway, so
they're cow whale wranglers.
really, really. So with the 4G, I'm finally like my character ended up actually being like a tour guide to this like insane dungeon that got like, okay, I fucking get it now. I get it now. And like I finally understood the context of the world. And so to me, for my long form campaign, what I've done is I've actually made a newspaper, like a sample newspaper of one page to basically kind of show like this is what the average person worries about. This is what the average person, this is what reporting looks like in
That
this
is
world.
such a good idea.
And
That is
it's
such a good
I love
idea.
it so much. I'll
Yeah.
actually post it in the description box for people to check it out if you want.
Yeah.
I stole it from Tolus because Tolus has like a really great newspaper. So if you see similarities, it's because there are similarities. So it's so that's what actually I'll maybe I won't post it below, but I'll put a picture up for people to see.
So, this whole idea for this conversation came out of uh, just a Discord chat you and I had, and maybe it bears mentioning because it was basically like, I won't cast any shade here, but there's a YouTuber who was giving GM advice, and they're a fairly big YouTuber. How do I say this? It's like sometimes you see these so-called GM tips or whatever, and I just get this visceral reaction like I would hate being at your table. I would hate it. And then I started to really analyze that and kind of unpack it. And what I realized was, okay, well, do I want to be at a table with someone who has the kind of ego to sit there and having only expertise in one RPG system? And we all know this type of person who's only ever played one kind of RPG. No shade on that. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's a whole world of other games out there with different styles and different mechanics. Like Swords Without Master doesn't have a failure condition. What's wrong with that, right? Or anyway, so this person's got this, hot take. They've got this very polarizing opinion, and it is right. It is my opinion is correct. You can't you can't create immersion and engagement unless you kill off player characters every once in a while.
I
That
really
was like
struggle with that.
and that
I'm
was like
really
so
sorry to interrupt, Jerry, but like
yeah,
I really want to underscore that point. I really struggle with that. Like this is the be all and end all of truth, and I am a beacon of wisdom. Like I
yeah.
really struggle with that
It's
approach.
it's an opinion. It's a fine, and they and the person backed up their opinion and they had an argument. They certainly had an argument, but really, it's the only way. It's the only way. And if you're not killing off players, you can't you by default don't have immersion and you don't have engagement. It's like what kind of ego, right? So this is where the kind of thing is like why would I not want to be at that person's table? I'm sure they know things. I'm sure they're really great at running adventures, but I just don't understand how you could run a game with the kind of empathy and the kind of soul that it takes to create a really good immersive experience and be carrying around a giant ego like that can make statements like that. And I really did think about it quite a bit because I did have quite a reaction. I think I made a comment on the video to this effect as well. It's why I love the Savage Interludes podcast so much because they offer opinions and thoughts and but they don't, shit all over someone else's way of doing it
Yeah.
or, there's nothing really objectively right and true or wrong. Again, and take my opinions with a grain of salt, obviously as well. But and maybe some people really are gravitated to that kind of very directive, very prescriptive. These are the top 10 things you must do to be a good GM. And some people just need that or they want that. And I'm a very artsy fartsy sort of non-linear thinker. I'm the opposite of that, right? Like I am lateral up the wazoo. I came out of the box, out of the box. So it's something I'm allergic to, but again, so this is what kind of got the ball rolling for me and really thinking about sort of yeah, the whole ego versus, being a GM and not having a giant ego deal.
Yeah. So I think we've one of the things I wanted to ask was, where does ego come into the picture? And I think we've talked about a couple different ways. One is sort of being real precious about your creation and not letting your players kind of find interest in other areas of your creation. And
Mhm.
that's the thing I really want to mention. Like it's not that your players are not engaging with what you've prepared. You've prepared all of this. Like it's not like they're ignoring your shit. It's that like for some reason something else seems to have stuck.
Yeah.
And I think for me it was like I don't know, was it the physical description of Kindle? I can't even remember what it was. But there was just something about the way that that NPC was presented that I was like, I desperately need to know more about this person.
I think I know what it was. I think I know what
What
it
was
was.
it?
I'm not sure I should out you. I'm not sure you can cut this
I'll
part out.
edit it out. It's
But
fine. Oh my god, I can't believe you remember that. I can't believe you. I'm so embarrassed that you remember that.
oh,
Okay.
don't be
No,
embarrassed.
no, no.
You
Like friend embarrassed. Like
Oh,
not
okay,
like
okay, okay.
not like I want to die embarrassed.
Okay, good.
Not yet.
That's awesome.
Anyway. So we've talked so the other thing is where you go comes into the picture is don't be afraid to share more than less. Like with your with the PCs about the world. Like give them the context to make context appropriate decisions. If punching a guy is going to get them thrown in jail because like this place does not suffer outward violence, like all the violence is like quietly done in back rooms, like that's something that your character would know.
Mhm.
Like the even if the player doesn't, the character should know it. And it's really shitty to set your PCs up to fail.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid of giving them more rather than less.
Yeah. if the players are, and this is not a problem I have frequently, but many people, or in the past I've had it where, players are doing reckless shit. Like they're doing their whatever. They're being murder hobos, or they're just doing very, very, very reckless shit, which is ruining my fun. It's ruining my immersion as the dungeon master. And yeah, you can throw in some consequences, some heavy consequences. You can have some
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
serious, not fooling around guards roll up and just tune them.
Yeah.
And but that's a whole different thing. I hate
But
doing that.
only if you've
And
given them
yeah,
the opportunity to not make that decision.
right, right. I just can't. Keeping secrets so you can have the really cool sort of like M. Night Shyamalan moment is
Yeah, dude.
neat, but not
I
when it
know.
screws up the
Yeah, not at the
yeah,
expense of player agency. Like not at the expense of your
right,
players actually being able to make context appropriate
right,
decisions. Like especially if the person is playing someone who is generally kind of thoughtful and meticulous and that kind of thing. Like
yeah,
they especially would know the context of the world.
yeah,
And someone who's competent, someone who's educated, who's like whatever else,
mm.
would absolutely know the context of the world. And it's just like there are things that the player knows the character doesn't, there are things that the character will know that the player doesn't.
Well, I think that there's a right and wrong way to do a rug pull moment, right? Or something like that. And I think that a healthy meta discussion, like for example, when the group in our game got captured, it's kind of like, okay, so this is what's going to happen. We can have a great big fight, but you're going to lose it, and you're going to take a whole bunch of damage. You're going to spend all your bennies, and that's going to suck. Or we can just roll with the fact that this is the part in the story where you get captured, so that something cool can happen later, as often happens in just about any pulp. Flash Gordon gets tied up sometimes. Like that's just how it is. Indiana Jones gets captured like 5 times in every movie he's in. So, right, but he always escapes, and it's always really friggin' awesome when he does. And so I just, you just have that meta discussion, and you say, look, here's the deal, right? This is going to happen. You really don't have a lot of choice in the matter. We'll narrate out how it happens, and you go down swinging, and that's all great. My contract with you, the player, is I'm not going to kill your dog. I'm not going to take something you love away from you without properly rolling dice and having a proper, this is a cutscene moment so that cool things can happen. And then I checked in afterwards and I say, was that worth it? Was that cool? Or, do you mind that if we do it once, as long as it's not every day? Is that cool?
Yeah.
And people seem to go along with it. Like,
And
there's one or
I,
two
I
more of those in the
really,
story.
really
That's
want
fine.
to underscore that point, Jerry, because I think it's so important. Like having the meta discussion about what's appropriate in the game, what's fun for people, like that does not break immersion. You
Yeah.
don't have to worry about breaking immersion by talking about the game. Acknowledging that it's a game doesn't make it less fun.
Yeah.
Like it's I as an example, and this is not an immersion thing, but just to kind of talk about the sort of above the table conversation that I actually really think helps rather than hurts. In pretty much every case, I would say. Very, very recently, this character that we're talking about, like my character, is developing in ways that are making her pretty violent and kind of ruthless and brutal, and she's sort of learned a lot of things to kind of temper her violent ability, but she seems to be ignoring that stuff more and more. And so she has those learnings intellectually. She knows that, she's supposed to be more of a protector than someone who seeks out violence, but she's kind of pivoting towards that second piece. The problem with that is if I play that like to the hilt, and if I play that like, oh, this is just what my character would do, I'm effectively taking the agency away from everyone else at the table. Because I will go from 0 to 100 because of where I want my character to be emotionally and mentally right now. And the thing is that I am basically so I had a conversation with our fellow players and with you as well, Jared, to be like, hey, listen, like this is the direction I want to take her. For any reason, like if any of the characters step in to de-escalate even a little bit, I'll back down. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to push, but, like, you should know that I want to kind of take you to a place where she escalates, but what that means is that for all of you to stay good morally, you might have to talk her down a little bit.
Mm.
And the thing is, you didn't sign up for that. Like, that's not the kind of character you agreed to play when you first started this game. So me having that meta conversation with you now to be like, "Hey, would this be something you'd be comfortable doing?" Like, that doesn't remove anything. That
No.
adds my ability to play a character that I want to play, and it makes sure that the other players don't feel stepped on because I want to make certain character choices.
Yeah, well, I mean, this isn't theater. This isn't television.
No, it's
This
not.
this is this there is no fourth wall to break, right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
it's just so I'm talking to the camera. So what? There is no camera, really, right? There's This is just us around a table or around a Zoom chat trying to tell stories and roll dice. And the immersion can come from meta stuff as well as, and if somebody's just taking you right out of the world and making fart jokes in the middle of a really, really, really serious scene, that's one thing, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about enhancing the story or enhancing safety, getting more buy-in, which is a component of the immersion, right? So yeah, meta discussion is absolutely crucial. I mean, sometimes you're all clicking on the same wavelength and you really can just keep it rolling and have very, very little of that.
There's
And that's
so
fine
much
too.
assumption tied into that, though.
Yeah, right. You still, I mean, sometimes you need a lot and sometimes you don't. Being able to reach for that when you need to reach for that and understand that it actually, I think it enhances the immersion if it's done the,
Completely agree.
in a good way.
Completely agree.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
haven't figured out yet how I want to articulate this idea, but I am a big, big proponent of share more rather than less. And I have seen it to fantastic effect at my own table when I GM and also with our table as a player.
mm,
So really, really awesome. Um,
cool.
Couple of questions that I want to wrap with Jerry because I think we've talked about a few other things organically as I suspected we might.
Yeah, it's chaos.
Yeah. How do you recognize when the ego is rearing its stupid little head, and how do you stamp it
Hmm.
down?
Man, it's I mean, self-awareness is tricky, right? When people behave badly, that's usually when they're the least self-aware, and that's when you need the self-awareness the most, right? So this is a work in progress for every human on the planet. But I can think of one recent time that it's, I guess, easier when you're doing a game on Discord because you can see your own face and you can see your own facial expression, out of the side of your eye. Hopefully, you're not like staring at yourself the whole time because that'd be, a little bit egotistical, right in its own, right on its face. But
Sure.
uh, I saw my face in a game, and one of the players was reacting to it as well, and she was apologizing for something that was totally my bag, right? It was just I was in my own head and I was making faces because I was upset by something that was happening outside of game, and I was like, "Oh shit, this is like I'm having some whatever." I don't think emotional bleed would be exactly the right term for this because that it was kind of almost the opposite of what you would typically consider emotional bleed because it was coming from outside of the game and it was coming in to affect my performance as the GM. And I just kind of had to take a minute, right? I just had to be like, all right, well, what do am I going to finish this game? I'm not having a good time. I'm bummed out by something. So I just emphatically said, "No, you're not doing you keep doing what you're doing. You're awesome. What everybody's doing is amazing. I'm just going through some shit right now." And it's probably the most recent example I can think of, you know, and it really did help that I don't know if I was at a table where, you know, I'm behind my face instead of seeing it in front of me. I don't know if I would have been as switched on to that because I really, like I say, self-awareness can be a real bitch. Like it can be really hard. But other things like just being real with why does this matter to me? Why, you know,
Yeah.
why is it so important for me to get through this scene tonight? Like we do it tomorrow night. We do it the next night, right? Or why am I getting so annoyed that this NPC is coming off as a villain when they're supposed to be the good guy? Like what's wrong with these idiots? Like fuck, you know, like and you have those moments, right? But then you just kind of go, well, they're having fun and maybe it's a villain now. I don't know. Maybe it's or maybe it's a hologram, you know, maybe it's the good guy, but it's actually a villain in a disguise or something like that. And they'll meet the real good guy later who this person's impersonating. Or you just kind of and then you just start thinking and then but being real with yourself and checking with yourself and being asking yourself like why what is motivating me right now to be this way or to feel a certain way about this.
Yeah.
And I think that's really all you can do, and then after you do that, you check in with the players and just, you know, uh, if it got a little out of hand or if you were short or if you were heated or overly precious about something, you just check in with them and go, "Okay, well, how are we feeling about that?" You know,
Yeah.
if you have to, but hopefully you can catch it on the fly and regroup, you know? Say you have
Yeah.
to pee.
Yeah.
Say you have to let the dog out for a pee. I use that one all the time.
Oh, that's good.
Yep.
I don't really have anything for shorter games that I do, especially because honestly, like for shorter games and one shots, like I'm super easy. I'm not I don't feel a lot of ownership over the
Mm,
game. And that's not a bad thing for me. That's actually a really good thing because I know the outline of the story I want to tell, but the specifics are and Jerry, you've heard me mention this before, I'm sure, and I know other people have, but I basically use a what's called a what I've heard referred to as a Brontosaurus method, where you have like a finite start point, a finite end point, and then like a big nebulous middle where the players through whatever the hell they wanted.
nice.
And that's
Yeah,
how I run my short games. Is
that's
I
cool.
have a story outline and like what that middle section means is that like if the players have decided that they're gonna fucking go to the docks instead of the ration hall or whatever, then like the dock master, I guess, is gonna tell you about this weird carnival that just pulled in
Nice.
instead of the lunch lady. You know, but either way, they're going to move the story forward regardless of what path they take. So with shorter games, because that's my approach, I don't have a lot of ownership about what happens. I really only have ownership about where we start and where we end, and
Mm.
that's fine. For
I need to
my
get better about that. And I think can I just say that I think more learning mnemonics need to feature dinosaurs. I
yes,
think
love
the
it,
world would be a better
love it.
place, right? I mean,
I
come on.
agree. I
Come on.
agree. I was told once upon a time that Robin Laws uses this term. So ever since then, I'm like, yeah, no, you know, I use the same thing that Robin Laws talks about. So no big deal.
That's great. Yeah,
I
I
had no
find
idea if it's true or not. I just had like someone like it's one of those things that like be like, oh, Matthew Webster likes peanut butter. Like, oh, I like peanut butter.
suddenly your peanut allergy goes away. It just vanishes,
Exactly.
it cures.
Exactly. So anyway, with my longer game though, I don't have the level of self-awareness that you just described. What I do have, I know what fucking sets me off. I know what sets me off, and one of the
Mm,
things that sets me off is hearing about changes that need to be made in the game during the game. So I have very
Oh,
specifically asked my players, I'm like, listen, we can talk about fucking anything you want after the game.
yeah.
But like during the game, like I don't have the capacity. Like I spiral. I tend to spiral when like if you tell me that like and it'll be something so innocuous, Jerry. It'll be some shit like, oh, I didn't realize this NPC was supposed to come off this way. You know, they really come off this other way. I'm like, what?
Oh.
I can't deal with that in game. I for some reason I really struggle with that.
Yeah,
But I know that about myself. I
yeah,
know that about myself. And like to your point of self-awareness, like that's my kind of self-awareness. So I've
yeah,
told my players, I'm like, guys, I'm really sorry, but I don't have the capability to honor what you're saying to me during the
yeah.
game.
Oh,
And
yeah.
like I want to honor what you're saying to me. Like I want to give you that space and I want to hear you and I want to modify the game as is appropriate. But I don't have the resiliency or the capacity or the flexibility to handle any of that during the game.
Oh, yeah.
It has to be after the game.
And
So
we
that's one thing. The other
Uh-oh.
the other part, I can feel myself getting defensive. I can feel when I get defensive about shit. And that to me is like, okay, you're acting up. Now it's time to like be intentional about why you're getting defensive.
I
To
think
your
that's a
point,
really
Jerry,
good
about
one.
like
Mm,
why is it so important to finish the session tonight? Why is it so important to me that this NPC comes off a certain way?
yeah,
Like, I don't have the self-awareness to talk about that shit, but I know when I'm getting defensive.
yeah, yeah. Hmm. No, that's a really good one. That is, that's probably pretty close to a universal, right? You know, I find I like what you said about the Brontosaurus because I'm kind of a little bit the opposite. Like, I don't run a lot of one shots. I'm playing in more and more of them, but I don't
I run so many
run
of
them.
them.
And I suck at time management and I start to get stressed. So I did this like mini campaign, the superheroes mini campaign, and I think I've run it 3 times. The first time I ran it, I needed to fire some players. I they were just not the right kind of player for me.
That's hard.
Very much like very much, they drove the characters like they stole them, and they were doing crazy crap and like using
It's not that game. It's not
just
that game.
it wasn't a good game. I wasn't a good storyteller for them, and they weren't a good player for me. And I just, it wasn't it, and it bugged me. Before I realized that this just wasn't working, and
That's
I
heartbreaking,
wasn't
man.
having fun. That's okay. I mean, these things happen. I mean, we're friends. I just don't want to play RPGs with them, but I'll play,
Sure.
Battleship with them. Like,
Sure.
they're very much the sort of Diablo type. And then I ran it again, and it went really, really well. And then I ran it again, and it didn't go so well. So, but one thing I notice when I'm running constrained, this is a three or four part deal. I get stressed. Like, I want to get through as much of it as I can get through, and because it was something I was writing, I wanted to get through every single scene so that I could play test every single scene. Whereas if you were running, you wouldn't have that approach if you weren't trying to test it, right? So if I was to run it, I would be more relaxed if I was to run it and go, "Oh, we just skipped that scene. We got to make up some time here somewhere. So we're not going to stop there. We're going to go over there." With shorter games, I tend to get stressed, but maybe it's just because of the circumstances. Like, if I was running a published one shot, it probably wouldn't be as bad.
That's what I thought, but I've run a couple of published one shots now. That was actually on my list of this year because all of my one shots have been homebrews. And so one of my sort of commitments to myself was to make use of like the absurd amount of PDFs that I have and actually run a couple of published modules just to kind of learn how to do that. And I've done a couple and like they do not fit in a single session, man. Like they are 2 to 3 sessions of gameplay if you don't rush.
Mm,
So like I don't know how much of it is your time management and how much of it like I've run enough of them to say that pretty confidently. Like, I don't think I've ever run a published one shot as a single session.
Mm.
Like, I've tried.
Like
I've
that Radiant
fucking
Citadel one.
tried.
Yeah,
No, Radiant Citadel, we're doing two because I
yeah,
knew from the outset. I'm like, there's no fucking way. There's no
yeah, yeah.
way this is gonna be one. And so even at the start, because I've had that experience with other one shots, very specifically the first one that I had that experience with was uh, and I can't even remember what it was called, but it was like fifth edition fantasy from Goodman Games, and it was this like really cool like murder mystery vampire like whatever adventure like it was really cool, but honestly it's two sessions, maybe three.
Mm,
Like it is
yeah,
not I'm like how I was so stressed at the end of it, Jerry. So because to your point, I'm like I am clearly doing this wrong. I am clearly doing this wrong.
yeah,
And that's your organic go-to,
yeah,
right? Like when you're trying to be a better GM, like you start with what can I have done differently?
yeah. Well, it's like, yeah, and that's another time to be mindful. Like now I know that when I'm trying to get through something and I'm looking at the clock and my 4 hours are almost up. It's like, look, what are you? You know, are you 4,000 feet up in the air? Are you in a jet plane with no gas in it? No,
Yeah.
right? You're
Yeah.
you're at a table with your friends and you can bring this thing into to some kind of an ending, in 15 minutes. You can do a quick encounter, you can do this and that. So just calm down, just take a deep breath, and or ask for another session. Like you've got
Yeah.
options. But yeah, it's one time that I have to check in with myself a little bit more. That's one time. To the Radiant Citadel story, if you had everyone at your table was a Diablo style D&D player, you'd get through that in one session, right?
Yeah,
Because they'd be like, keep it
maybe.
rolling,
I
man,
don't know.
keep it
My
rolling. All right,
GM speaks
you know,
really slowly.
right?
So
That's right. Well, it's
so
kind of like, but it's like, all right, we spent a lot of time talking in the temple, right? And we spent a lot of time describing how
yeah.
we deal with this tidal wave and stuff. And it's like, some players, I know them, they would just click right through that. They just be like,
Yeah.
okay, tell me what to roll. All right, what's the next thing? All right, this priest is getting boring now. Where do we go
Yeah.
now? Where do we go
Yeah.
now? And they'd be through that thing in 3 hours, right?
Yeah. Which is I think the expectation at a convention.
Yeah.
Which is it's very like boom, 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 but like one of the many reasons I don't run games at conventions.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I've only run one con game, and it was okay. That was fine. I probably won't again. Like I'll probably play at con games, but I don't think I'll run at a con anytime soon. But like it was a good experience. It was fine. But I probably won't do it again.
I would like to just try it, just to
You
go to
should,
one of
man. It's
these
fun. It's
famous
fun.
these famous GMs that do the cons.
Oh yeah,
Gotta
yeah, the
right?
congios.
Just
Yeah, yeah. No, I don't think I can stand up for that. It's fun though. You totally should. You totally should. I think you'd have fun. I think that's pretty much all I wanted to ask you, Jerry. Oh,
okay.
no, actually, no, there is one that I'd like to man, I'm so bad at this.
You are great. You
No,
are great.
I
It's
don't know if I
organic.
am.
It's an organic
That's
conversation.
very kind of you. That's very, very kind and very generous of you. The, last
I'm
question.
allergic to rules. I'm allergic to walls. I need to be free form.
Oh, good. Then yes, that's exactly what this was intended to be. It's not just me fucking up. My very last question is after you've identified that your ego is causing you to maybe do things or say things that you don't want to do, how do you try and stamp it down?
Sometimes you need a minute, especially if you've kind of gotten emotional. Sometimes you just remind yourself why you're there. And why other people are there and what's going on. I think the hardest part is getting to the point where you're recognizing the problem. I think once you
Agree.
recognize the problem, that's
Totally agree.
you're 90% home now. Like you've got it. You've got it.
Yeah.
You just need to follow through.
Yeah.
right?
I want to
So,
underscore what you said though. Like, think about the other people there.
yeah,
And go back to sort of the start of this video. Like, the whole point is decentering yourself.
yeah.
And if you can identify that your ego's getting in the way, just start with stamping out. Remember why the other people are at the table.
Well, you can go one of two ways when you're in that on that kind of moment of realization. You can double down and go, "No, they're the assholes. I'm totally right to feel this way." And the self-justification, and then like, I'm not being the asshole, they're being the asshole, and it's like, it doesn't matter who's the asshole. You're there to have fun. Get get the car back on the road, man. Like, right? You're heading straight for the rhubarb, my friend. You need to get you need to get your hands back on the wheel. So it's that's the thing, because the urge to self-justify and do all that is, it's not, maybe they are the asshole, but they're your
No.
asshole.
They
They're in
are.
your
They're
they're
your
at
asshole.
your table, and you want to kind of, you're kind of the leader at the table, so you set the tone, really. And yeah, I guess that's kind of what I how I feel about that. And I don't know, it's something that takes practice as well, because that whole, when you get hijacked by a feeling, it is very tempting to just sort of self justify. And I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes you do need to do that check in and go, wait a minute, do we need to just call it here, and just maybe have a private talk with somebody who's
Yeah.
being a jerk? Or there are many times that anger or some kind of emotional reaction is the appropriate reaction, right? So that's fine as well, but you try and do it try and
Yeah, you
rule out.
have to think about it. You have to
You
be
have to think
intentional about
about
it.
it, and you have to make sure that your ego isn't the main
Yeah. It
contributing
can't
factor.
just be a reaction. It
No.
has to be it has to be, okay, I've given this some thought and based
Yeah.
on that I've arrived at this.
Yeah.
It cannot, and that's the mindfulness part of this is like that intentionality around your emotions and behaviors that's the important part.
Yeah.
The ego
Ideally,
is the trigger.
you don't even want them to know.
When you put your relationship first, which is what has to happen in these kinds of scenarios, because that's basically what it is. You're saying that, like, listen, the game and my creation is not as important as how you feel about it.
Oh, hell yeah.
I want to sort of paraphrase this moment from Scrubs that has always that has stuck with me ever since I first saw
It's
it.
such a good show.
It's such a good show. But there's this moment where I guess they're like all it's just clips of them talking to like a new staff psychologist or something. And there's like a moment where Dr. Hawks is talking about his relationship with Jordan, and he is saying, he's like, it's not always gonna be easy. It's not always gonna be sunshine and roses. But the thing is, like, even when you are so mad at each other, someone will fucking back down.
Yeah.
If it's important enough, if you value what you have enough, one person will always back down.
Right.
And like, it's okay that that's you. It's
Yeah.
okay that you are the one to say, I value this relationship enough that I want to do this thing.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that might not always be true.
and that's
Like
not
that's my
yeah,
thing.
and
It's
that's not weakness. That's
no,
just what
it's
I wanted to
super
get in there.
not.
It's the opposite, in fact. If you're
Absolutely.
willing to, I mean, don't let people continue to hurt you if
Sure.
they're doing something that hurts you. But if you are at loggerheads, and you just decide, instead of trying to win this, I'm going to take a step back and win the bigger game, right? I'm going to
Yeah.
win. You're trying to win this argument right now, and obviously it's very important to you. I'm going to step back and win the relationship game, right? I'm going to
Yes.
win the friendship
Yes.
game, and I'm going to, that's the game I'm winning at. And that
Yeah.
and that that's strength. That's being not, I mean, people, the kind of strength that needs to get the last word always, that's a very brittle kind of person. That's a very brittle, cheap kind of strength. Anyway, now we're getting on the couch. Now we're getting on the couch. We should probably talk about ego at the table in players, like how to deal. Like, there's people talk about problem players a lot and stuff, but sometimes players get in a certain mindset or a certain way about the way they want things to go, and they start, white knuckling on locked onto something, and that can be a challenge as well.
Yeah.
I wonder if you have any thoughts on that, or if you've dealt with that.
No, that's a really, really good point. I'll be honest, we can talk about the generational trauma that comes with being a woman of color, where you always start with, what should I have done differently?
Mm,
What should I have? And in every interaction that is sour. So when I have a player that's white knuckling, my first reaction, perhaps incorrectly, probably incorrectly, is, what have I not been able to give to you?
yeah,
What have I not been able to enable for you?
yeah. Yeah, and not to minimize what you just said about generational trauma, and I would say, just I would add that part of that is because you're a good person. I mean, I think anybody who's
All
a
that.
good functioning non-sociopathic person needs to have an a healthy subroutine running in the back of their brain somewhere that is always operating, saying, "Okay, am I the asshole here? Am I the asshole here? Am I the asshole here?" And you don't want that to drown out all the rest of your brain, but it should be clicking all the time, right? Because if you're just like, "I'm right, I'm awesome, everyone else sucks," you're y- you're you're a tit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, you just, yeah,
You're
I don't.
being exclusionary and kind of a jerk.
Yeah, yeah.
So
No,
I mean,
so that's good.
I
It's good that you
actually
check in with yourself and you ask, "Oh man, this
that's
person,
really kind,
I like this
Jerry.
person.
Thank
They're
you.
really upset with me. Did I screw up? What did I do?"
Yeah.
And then hopefully you get to the right answer of, like, you don't beat yourself up too much, and then you can kind of, if your answer is always, "Yeah, I fucked up. I'm a loser." If that's always your answer, well, that's not good either, right?
Yeah. So that's interesting because I don't really do the second part. It's not, I fucked up and I'm a loser. It's, I fucked up. Fuck, how do I fix this?
Right, right, right. Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I am to a fault about solutions. And
Mm,
like it's a problem. I'm trying to work on it. But to a fault, I am solution driven. But like to your question, which I think is an excellent one. I don't know how to deal with those kinds of players, because I always start with and often end with, what should I have done differently? So
mm,
inevitably, it's never it. I might end up like acquiescing to what the player wants, but again, only after I understand what it is they're trying to get at.
yeah.
And that's the part I think professionally as a salesperson, like, it's easier for me to do, because I have found, and I've said this to you, that people tend to talk in solutions. People don't talk in problems. People
Mm,
will say shit like, I want my rogue to be able to just like appear in the shadows or whatever. That's the solution. The problem is that my PC is supposed to be ultra competent assassin, and I haven't been able to show that off.
mm,
Like, so I need to understand what the problem is. I need to
right.
understand what it is that's driving that white knuckleness, and then I can try and fix that. My cat is again very vehemently agreeing.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that communication is important?
Oh
Is that
no,
what we're
that can't be something as basic as all that. I
saying?
can't be saying something as basic as that.
Uh, yeah, so 3 hours later, we arrive at communication is important. Thank you for coming to our TED Talk.
Yes,
Good
thanks.
night.
I'm not gonna apologize for some. Listen, communication is important, and I
Yeah,
that is my tepid take.
nice.
What about you? How do you deal with that?
Uh, People flipping out at the table?
or having ego-driven anything. Your
Well,
players having
I think
egos
that
they're unwilling to let go of.
I've just like again, I've just leaned into the fact that I'm Marmite and if you I'm doing my best here. Some people, if you don't like it, if you don't get it, you tried, I tried, let's just maybe we should just go our separate ways. I'm not I have no problem with that. And it's not no hard feelings. I don't get pissy about it or anything, but it's kind of like, clearly you're feeling some kind of way about this. Let's try and talk through it. But sometimes it is what it is, right? Maybe that sounds harsh, but this is my hobby. I do this for fun too, right? So that's a part of it. I think that, but there's a lot of in between stuff, right? There are players who just are having a bad day, or you're having a bad day, and yeah, just communicating, trying to get to the bottom of it. But if someone's really getting, uh, if they're getting really, you know, stuck in their ego and they're being very precious with their character or precious with a story element, or uh, interrupting other players or screwing up their moment so that all of that is kind of a problematic ego thing that I try to take deal with a very I try and deal with that with a very, very light touch. And usually you can kind of get them back in into a more reasonable footing. So just kind of saying, well, okay, so we know what you're doing. So I want to hear how so and so is reacting to this, right?
I love that.
And right? And it's and if they're still talking, it's like, okay, I'm still waiting to hear how so and so reacts to this. So we'll just get back to that in a second, right? And then sometimes it's just outside doing it, and sometimes like it's an outside conversation, right? And sometimes you just check in with them. You go, "Hey, is everything going okay today? Do you have a good day? Anything you want to talk about?"
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you kind of pull out you just put on the Mr. Rogers cardigan, right?
Yeah.
And you just, kind of that goes a long way too. I don't mean it to come off manipulative. I mean it genuinely. I game with my friends. These are my friends, right? So if someone's
Yeah,
acting
no,
like a
I
bit of
think
a
the
tool,
basic assumption is that everybody cares about everybody
yeah,
else at the table. Like
yeah,
that's the
yeah,
assumption with which we're
yeah.
having this
And
conversation.
yeah, and if someone's being a bit of a knob or something, I'm genuinely concerned, right? Because I know them and they're not usually that way. So anyway, so it's just there's a lot of different things that you can do to sort of snap people out of whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
I'm still trying, but honestly though, I'm still trying to figure it out. I have the peopling side is always a work in progress, right? Like the story side,
Yeah.
yeah, I feel pretty okay about my skills, but the peopling side is always I'm my own worst critic in a lot of ways in that
Mm.
regard too. So it's a work in progress, but yeah, there's a lot of things. Again, it just comes back to communication, and if it's a Discord game, you can sort of private message to them and go, "Is everything okay? What's up?" That's
Yeah.
that's my big long-winded answer.
No, that's great, Jerry. That's awesome. So that is all I have, Jerry. I think we've covered more than what I was hoping for today, which is just awesome. And I really hope that people get the value out of watching this as I did talking to you about this.
Yeah.
So
My head feels
that's my hope.
appropriately shrunk now.
Right,
Yeah?
right.
That's
So
very good.
yeah, no, I'm feeling later as well.
I'm gonna go I'm gonna go I'm gonna go cry right now.
I can't because my mascara is not working. So I'm gonna keep it together.
Okay, sweet.
But only because of my mascara. That's like a real driving factor these days. But
Nice.
anyway, um thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you for the time, and thank you for being open and for being vulnerable and for um, talking about things that are maybe not super easy to talk about. So thank you.
Oh, you're most welcome. I hope that people get something out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Well, thank you everybody for watching, and come see us again soon.
Like and
Bye.
subscribe.
Oh my god, yeah, one of us should say it. Bye.
Like and subscribe.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye.